I'm going to let her introduce herself. So we are recording now. So welcome to our
Can I tell a
third
joke?
class. Nope, not yet, Miss Michaela. Actually, I think we're going to save jokes for the very end of today's class if we have time, okay? Because Miss Cass has tons of information to share with us, really cool information. So she is going to lead our class today. I'm going to let her introduce herself so that I don't do it wrong. And I want everybody to be extra polite and extra courteous and kind to her while she's going through her class. But that also means we have an extra set of adult eyes. So if you have a question, be sure to raise your hand because I'm actually going to be looking for you guys to raise your hands. That way Miss Cass doesn't have to do it, okay? So if you have something you want to say, shoot your hand up or put it in the group chat and I'll make sure that I'm paying attention, okay? Sound good, guys? All right, Miss Cass, I am handing it over to you.
Cool. Hello, friends. I'm gonna introduce myself a little bit more with pictures when I'm presenting, but my name is Cass and I have lived in Albuquerque for a long time. How many of you are in Albuquerque? Raise your hand or go, woo. Cool. I lived in Albuquerque for a number of years and now I live in Taos, New Mexico. Raise your hand if you've been to Taos. Nice. So I have been a outdoor education guide. I've taken probably 1,000 children on hikes around the entire country in different states. And today I'm going to share one of my favorite things to you, which is about food that you can eat that you don't have to grow in a garden. You can just go find it in the wild. So we're going to talk about when you can find food and eat it and when you can't. And yeah, we'll have some fun.
Wonderful. All right, well, you have screen sharing abilities, Cass, so you go ahead and...
Did you want to share yours or you want to?
Oh, you are so awesome. I'm so glad you reminded me. All right, guys, before we get on to that part of the class, I should have done this earlier. You are very correct. We are going to take a peek really quick at some of the awesome things that you guys worked on this last week and sent along to me. So here we go. All right, so as you will see on this screen, dun, 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 Miss Harper is on the screen. I saw her earlier today. Harper, amazing job on your compost bin. I am so jealous. It is so gorgeous. And if you look at Harper's compost bin, it even actually tells us all the things that we can put in it and that we cannot put in it. So great job composting, Harper. We are so, so proud of you. Ethan and Rowan. Oh yeah, air high five, guys, right here. Yep, doing amazing stuff right here. They are working on their composting bin too. And you can see there's some extra grapes in there. They've got brown matter. They've got green matter. They are doing amazing. Good job, Ethan and Rowan. Eskew right here is working on his mini garden. That's right. He has worked so hard and I know he's growing. Eskew, you want to unmute yourself and tell us what you're growing, bud?
Carrots, radishes, and salad.
Carrots. Yeah, there we go. Carrots, radishes, and lettuce. Air high five, bud. Right here. Woo, woo. Good job. I am so proud of you guys. You guys are doing so good. And then we have, okay, so this picture was sent to me without a name. Somebody unmute yourself and tell me all of these beautiful oyas that you made. Who is this?
Me.
Where? Hold on, I gotta find you on my screen. I can't see. I can't see. Tell me your name, me.
The owl.
Oh man, did you work so hard on these oyas?
Well, my dad made them.
Your dad made them? Did you help him? A little bit? Yeah, I am so proud of you guys. What are you gonna grow in your garden with your oyas?
I think a watermelon.
Oh, a watermelon. I loved watermelon. That's amazing. Air high five, bud. Good job. Thank you for sending me the picture. All right. And then the last picture that we have, I just wanted to show you guys my garden. And so I worked all weekend long in my garden and I was working on getting all of our spaces ready. So here is where I grow my peppers. And in here we grow jalapenos. And over here, I'm probably going to grow my tomatoes this year. And over here, I'm actually going to try our Three Sisters planting that we learned about last week, our companion planting. So we're going to do some gardening over here. And then inside my tires, I'll grow something. I'm always growing tons of things. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my garden with you guys too. And I think at some point, I'm going to have some extra starters plants for you guys, maybe to win in one of our classes in the next coming weeks, because I grew too many cucumbers, like maybe 30 plants of cucumbers. I don't even know why I did that, you guys. So I definitely am going to be able to share with you. I have a couple people raising their hand. Gio, did you have a question or something you wanted to share? Oh, you're muted, bud. Unmute yourself.
I'm growing blueberries.
You're growing what?
Blueberries
Blueberries. Ooh, right on. That's awesome.
and strawberries.
And strawberries. Okay, very, very cool. Okay, so we can,
Find something.
I don't know who said that.
Julia.
Okay, what are you growing?
We're growing flowers, and we're gonna start our garden this year again.
Awesome. Very, very good. Okay, guys, I see other hands raised, but I'm going to ask everybody to put their hands down really quick. And at the end of class, I'm going to let everybody talk again, okay? But for now, I'm going to hand it back over to Miss Cass because she's got a lot she wants to share with us today, okay, guys? Got it? Thumbs up, everybody ready? Okay, fabulous. Here we go. Miss Cass, it is all you. Oh, you might be muted.
Okay, how about now? Okay, it looks different now that I'm sharing my screen. I'm so glad that so many of you have questions and ideas, and hopefully you'll have even more things to share. For now, I want you to think about all the things you've learned and maybe type one thing that you've learned into the chat. You get bonus points if you type it in a full sentence, not just like compost, but I learned to compost banana peels, or something like that. So you can type that in or continue thinking about it while I do my presentation. So again, my name is Cass. This is a picture of me with a really cool plant I like called salsify. It kind of looks like dandelion. Like I said, have been an outdoor educator for a really long time. I also have a farm and a garden. I live like I said, in Taos, in an area with a big yard, and I have a lot of chickens. I had 80 chickens at one point, but nature kind of has a way of, there's a beautiful thing in nature called the food web, and some bigger animals eat animals like chickens when they're just roaming around. They're not only delicious to us humans. So now I have about 50, but here's a picture of some of my chickens. I also have a big yard where I garden and grow things, but I have learned from this experience that I am not a great gardener, which is why I'm going to talk about foraging. This is my harvest from last year. So SQ and others, stay patient. Eventually you'll have more food than you know what to do with, and you'll be giving people things. We still probably have hundreds of pounds of potatoes in the ground that we never harvested. We didn't get to all the carrots. And I can't take credit for growing all these because I had neighbors that helped me. So today we are talking about food foraging, and I'll talk about how that's different than gardening and why I'm talking about it. The definition is to search widely for food or provisions. Provisions is just another way of saying sustenance, food, things you eat, things that make you feel good. So when we go outside, we often explore with our eyes, right? You rarely go on a hike with your eyes closed, hopefully, unless you're doing some sort of challenge. So we use our eyes. What other sense do we use when we are out and about exploring?
Our nose.
Our nose, yeah, we can smell things like the smell of fresh cut grass, the smell of wildflowers. Right now, you might be smelling some of the flowers that are blooming on fruit trees. What about touch? When you go out and about, do you touch things while you're exploring? Do you ever touch something that hurts? Yeah, sometimes it's not good to just run your hands through everything. You have to have a little bit of caution when you touch things because there are things that can poke you or prickle. But we do use our sense of touch quite a bit. What about our sense of sound? When you go out, do you hear birds, lawnmowers, people, squirrels chittering, or woodpeckers pecking on the trees? We use all of those, but very rarely when we're out hiking outside of our yard, out and exploring, do we get to use the sense of taste. Have any of you ever eaten a leaf off a tree or the ground before? Some of you? Was it good? You can nod. Was it good? Was it bad? So this child is probably going to have a bad experience because the tree that he's eating does not, it looks like a fruit tree and he's eating the leaf of the fruit tree instead of the fruit of the fruit tree, which I don't recommend. But what I am going to teach you today is some of the plants that you can eat when you are out hiking away from your garden. But the theme that you're going to hear today is to exercise caution. You shouldn't close your computer right now, run outside and go start eating leaves. Even with the pictures that I show you, you should always have an adult with you when you're looking for foraged foods. Where's my arrow? There we go. So we're gonna play a little game, foraged or garden. These carrots, do you think those are foraged or gardened?
Gardened.
Yeah, it's hard to find wild carrots, especially like that. Those are some of my funky carrots. Out here in New Mexico, we grow short, fat carrots because the ground is really hard. They don't look like store-bought carrots. What about this huge basket of apples? Do you think I foraged those or gardened them? Grew them in my yard?
Foraged.
Bingo, yeah. In my neighborhood, there are a lot of fruit trees that have been growing for a really long time, and they grow along the acequias, the ditches, so they don't really belong to anybody. I wouldn't go into a neighbor's yard and pick their fruit trees, but these are just along the road. And I still have dehydrated apple chips from the hundreds of apples that I foraged. All right, another one. These tomatoes, do you think I grew those or foraged them?
Foraged.
Foraged.
You think foraged because they're in a basket?
Grew.
I grew them. We grew hundreds of tomatoes. We grew so many
They
tomatoes.
look shiny.
They do look shiny.
Yeah. I feel like there's wax coating on that.
There's
Yeah, it
not.
kind of looks
I
like
grew
it.
those and I ate some of them right down in the garden where I grew them. And you might notice in the jars to the right, those are dehydrated tomatoes because I grew so many tomatoes that I had to dry them out because I don't really like tomato sauce and I was running out of things to do with all the tomatoes that I grew. What about this pumpkin? Do you think I foraged it or grew it in my garden?
Garden. Garden.
Grew it in your garden.
Here's a sad story. I used it as a Halloween decoration and it got sort of rotten. So I didn't even get to eat it, but my chickens did and they loved it. The nice thing about my chickens is no food gets killed.
Did you grow it?
I did grow the pumpkin. What about these tomatoes? They look different than the other tomatoes. What do you think?
Garden.
Garden heirloom tomatoes. And I use these tomatoes to make
Gardened.
where is it? A delicious tomato salad with olive oil that I served at a friend's wedding. It was so yummy. So stick with your gardening. It takes a long time, but once you can pick that juicy, delicious tomato right off the vine and taste it, it makes it so worth it. I couldn't find a picture of the literal buckets of plums that I found. So I'll give you a hint. I did forage those, but we were able to make 17 jars of plum jam from plums that I didn't even have to grow. I didn't have to water them. I didn't have to weed them. I just walked up when they were ready and I filled buckets and then, oh, let's see. Did I send a picture? Oh, I didn't. I have another picture of the stew pot that I used to make the plum jam, and we used a ton of sugar in it. And I'm still working through these jars of plum jam. So it's not wrong or right to forage food or garden food. Both have benefits. But today we're going to be talking about foraging and why we forage. All right, the good thing about foraging is that you don't have to water it. Like I said, someone else does all the watering. The bad thing is you have to go look for it. The good thing is you don't have to plan. You don't have to do all the work that Miss Sarah just showed in her garden. You don't have to do any of that when you're foraging, but you also don't know if the food is going to be there every year. So if you are gardening to make sure that you have food, you can't just be sure that you can go back to the tree that you were in yesterday or that you went to last year where I got tons of plums. Maybe this year they all got eaten by bears or the tree got cut down or something like that. You don't have to start from a seed like Eskew planting all his little seeds and hoping that it grows and watering it and wondering if you gave it enough water or too much water or if it has a fungus. You don't have to do that with foraging, but you can't guarantee those beautiful heirloom tomatoes that have been grown by people passing on generations of seeds. That doesn't happen with foraging. It's a little bit more wild. So sometimes you get the plums that we got were like little tiny quarter-sized plums, not like the big juicy purple ones you get in the store.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You were going a little fast and I couldn't understand everything you were saying.
Oh, thank you for letting me know that. I'll go back for just one, if I can. Where's the back button? For 1 second, I'll hold it here. Basically, Michaela, the theme is that when you forage food, it's a little bit random, whereas when you garden, you have a little bit more control, but it's more work. Foraging is sort of like when you go to a thrift store or a garage sale and you find something awesome that's really cheap, but you can't guarantee it's going to be there. The cool thing about foraging is that it's part of our history. If you've ever heard about hunters and gatherers, before we lived like we do now with computers and iPads and television, a long, long time ago, before all this technology, before there was radio, before there were cars, there were people that roamed around and they didn't have gardens. They gathered their food, they foraged.
Like these?
Maybe, I can't quite see that, but maybe. Once those people started settling down, they started finding fruit trees and growing their own fruit trees. They started raising goats and breeding goats. And then they started farming and gardening. And the cool thing is that foraging still happens in some communities, like this one in Africa. They get almost their entire diet from foraging. So these people in Tanzania, this group of the Hadza, they don't go to grocery stores. They don't cook up steak. They don't barbecue like we do. They don't have refrigerators. What do they do when they're hungry? There's some cool pictures down here. They forage food. They pick food from plants. And there's probably people all over the world that still do this. There's people in the United States that choose to do this instead of going to the grocery store, or that supplement their diets. Instead of going to the grocery store, they forage food. Today, my goal is not to change you all to stop going to the grocery store. I just want you to, what I want your takeaway to be is that you can eat food that's not from a grocery store, and that all of the food from the grocery store is grown outside. That is what I want your takeaway to be. Oh, so here's the do's and don'ts. Oops.
Cass, we had a question really quick, and I
Okay.
don't know that you know the answer. What do you know what the berries are called that were in the picture you just showed?
I have no idea. Those are some cool looking berries. They are yellow and they could be something that's endemic, that's specific to Africa, but I don't.
I think I do.
Do you think you know?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they are?
I have a tree that has berries like that, and I can't figure out what they are.
I think I think I've seen them, but I think when I called them, they were being called all sorts of different names at the farmer's market I was at getting them from. But the name that they were using a lot was small bullet seeds. I don't understand that name at all.
Thanks
Interesting.
for sharing that, Nicola. They could
And then
be.
they would change in between a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So
I don't actually know that.
do we have berries in this area?
All right.
Okay.
If everyone can mute,
Yeah, everybody's got to mute, you guys.
and I'll try
Michaela,
to-
you too. There we go. Okay.
It's possible that these might be a berry that's only found in Africa. They might be a relative to a berry that we can find at the farmer's market, but I don't know specifically, and I don't want to mislead you. So that's a great, curious question. And since I don't specifically know the answer, I'm going to move on, but I appreciate Michaela saying that she recognizes them. So this is probably the most important slide that I have to share with you. The do's and don'ts of foraging wild foods. You should always go with an adult. You should only eat something that you are sure, 110% sure that it is that food. You should never eat out in the wild. I do because I'm an adult and I've been doing this for a long time, but when I take students, we do some tests to make sure that what we have is for sure what we're eating. So if you're collecting some of the things that I show you in this, go out with an adult, collect them with an adult, and then bring them back in before you try them. And you should only eat ripe fruit there's a lot of the food I'm going to be showing you are things that aren't ripe right now because spring just started and they take some time to grow. So just because it's edible at one point doesn't mean you should go out and eat it right now, because it probably doesn't taste as good, or in some cases it can give you a tummy ache if you eat it at the wrong time.
Like cherries?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, like if you've ever eaten an apple off the tree before it's ready and it's really sour or kind of bitter,
I have.
because it's not ready yet, that's a great example. And clean foods, that doesn't mean you have to like wash it off with soap and water, but if you pick an apple off the tree and there's a big splatter of bird poop on it, are you going to take a bite of that apple? No, that's yucky. So the same thing goes with wild foods. You want to make sure it doesn't have any poop on it or anything. Often if it has a stick or something on it, you can brush it off. I don't need to wash it with soap and water, although that's probably good these days. The don'ts of foraging. So you don't taste test. Don't just pick things and think, oh, can I eat this? And try it, because there are some things that can give you tummy aches or make you really sick. Don't try anything that you don't know for 100% sure is edible. Like I said, don't eat samples out in the field. Don't go into neighbors' yards. Don't cross fences. Don't go in places you're not supposed to, even if the most delicious, most beautiful looking tree is on a neighbor's yard. Sometimes you can ask them. Sometimes I ask I have neighbors with an orchard and they don't pick all of their apples. And I ask if I can help them pick their apples. And sometimes I'll even pick some of the ones that have fallen that have spots, not for me, but for my chickens. My chickens get lucky. And this is really important. If I find a really beautiful tree full of lots of yummy raspberries, should I take every single raspberry that I can? No, because I do have the privilege of going to the grocery store and buying raspberries that were grown for me. It's fun to pick wild foods, but it's also important to remember that these wild foods that I'm going to show you have to be, that's what the bears eat, that's what the squirrels eat, that's what other people might want to come pick. Another kid in this class might come by that same trail, and if there's no raspberries, they're going to be really sad because they don't get to try them. It's really important, and the tree needs some of the raspberries. Well, not in the case of raspberries, but in some cases, this tree needs to drop some seeds so that it can keep growing. So it's really important that we never take all of something, that we share. All right, we are going to start talking about the plants that we can eat. First, let's do a little game of could you eat it, but should you eat it? What about grass? Do you think you can eat grass?
No.
Have any of you ever seen your dog or cat eating grass?
Yeah, I think you can eat grass, but you shouldn't eat grass.
Nice, Michaela. Yeah, you could eat grass like your dog does, but you should not eat grass, because grass is only edible to animals called ruminants. Those are animals that have 4 chambered stomachs, and those stomachs help them digest the grass. Cats and dogs cannot eat grass. That's why they eat it, to make them throw up or to help them poop. So if we were to eat grass, it would taste really gross, and it might have the same effect as if you were a dog or cat. It would make you throw up or it would make you poop. What about the seeds of this grass? Could you eat it or should you eat it?
No.
You could eat it, but you shouldn't eat it.
Yeah,
Here's a trick that's gonna
I agree with her, because I'm pretty sure that's the grass that the hunter-gatherers used to get to make.
Thanks, Michaela. You are a smart one.
Bad bread.
So here's a fun trick about seeds, grass seeds. You can eat every type of grass seed is edible, but should you eat it? Probably not, because like the grass in this picture, the seeds are so tiny that it would take you so long to get the husk off the seed. You might drop the part that's edible, or if you put it in your mouth, you wouldn't even taste it. So you could, if you were in a crazy survival situation and you were starving, you could eat the seeds of grass and it wouldn't make you sick. But it's so much work to get, these seeds are covered in a husk. Sometimes just the husk is left and the seed blows away, and you would have to know that. So it's often not worth it for wild grass. But here's something cool. Corn is a grass. We eat corn, right? Corn is the seed of a grass. Can you think of any other grass seeds that we eat?
Use the group chat, you guys. Everybody can't unmute at the same time. So if you know of something, type it in the group chat.
There's a grass grain, a seed from a grass that most of you probably ate today. If not today, I guarantee that you probably ate it yesterday, unless you're allergic to it. It looks like this. And it's called wheat. Wheat is a grass seed. So a long, long time ago, our hunter-gatherer ancestors would eat these grass seeds, and they started planting the biggest ones, and it kept going and it kept going, and they kept planting ones until we got corn, until we got wheat. And this is a bad picture, but oats are also a grass seed. And those corn, wheat, and oats look totally different. They've evolved over time as people have been planting them, but they are all grass seeds. So going back to our could, should, you could eat grass, you shouldn't. You could eat grass seeds, you shouldn't, except the ones that we have cultivated. All right, let's talk about some wild plants. Write in the chat what you think this is. Might be familiar to many of you.
Dandelion.
Yeah, I realize that it's hard to see the chat while I'm presenting. Yeah, this is a very familiar common plant. It's often called a weed because some people don't want it, but this is the best place to start with foraging food because dandelions are almost entirely edible. You can eat the flower, you can eat the leaves, you can even eat the stems that the flower grows on. People make spaghetti out of the stems. I've made dandelion spaghetti with the stems as noodles. Doesn't quite taste like spaghetti, but it's a cool foraged food. I've eaten salad out of the dandelion greens, and I've eaten the flowers. But there's going to be a lot of buts in this class. Should I go outside right now and pick the dandelions on the field in my schoolyard?
No.
Why do you think that might be a bad idea? You can write in the chat, or you can unmute.
You can get sick. And
Yeah. So
People step on it.
yeah, so not only has it been stepped on, sometimes if you are in a place where they're trying to make the ground look pretty, they'll spray chemicals either to get the grass grow or to get the weeds like dandelions, because they consider them weeds, to die, or to get the bugs on the plants to die. So when you're foraging,
I want to say something else about it.
go ahead, Michaela.
In my school, we would pick the flowers. We knew they wouldn't make the glass pretty at all because it just looked terrible. And most things, all they did was flatten it out. But dogs, and the grass area wasn't necessarily used by the kids, so they were after a little bit figuring that out, they allowed dogs in. But the dogs or the cats or any pet you bring there had to stay on the grass.
Awesome.
Unless they were a trained guide dog or some sort of dog that helps somebody move around.
Thanks, Michaela. Let's save stories like that. I just want to take questions because I don't have a lot of time, but I appreciate that. Yeah, what she said at first is sort of a point of opinion. So some people think that dandelions don't look great, and that's why they pick them, or that's why they spray chemicals on them. But now that you know the full potential of dandelions, if you are going somewhere where you are sure the dandelions are growing wild, they are something that is edible. Like I said, the flowers, the leaves. Would you want to eat a leaf if it's brown and wilted or has poop on it? No, but the leaves in this picture look great. You can pick them, you can wash them, you can throw them in your salad. You can even throw the stems in your salad. You can throw the flowers in your salad and have a dandelion salad. Some people also pick the flowers, and you can put them in a jar with sugar, and they ferment and they become an adult beverage, not for kids, because the fermentation makes it alcoholic. All right.
Where can you find them?
Where do you find them? You probably, I bet if you walk out of your house today, you'll start seeing them everywhere. I can see them from where I'm sitting right now. I can see a lot of them popping up. Look for this little yellow flower. A fun fact about dandelions, they are called that because in French, dandelion means sharp or lion's tooth. So the leaf has this point on it that kind of looks like teeth on a lion. If you look at just like one half of the leaf. So if it doesn't have these kind of pointed in and out loby leaves, then it might not be a dandelion, but they're pretty iconic and they're literally everywhere. But again, you should always have an adult. You shouldn't just go around picking things and eating them. You should have an adult, and you should be sure before you put something in your mouth that it's okay. I see a hand maybe, or maybe.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, Cass, there's a lot of hands.
Okay.
And so what I'm thinking is probably best is how about everybody type your question in the group chat, and then unless you're at a breaking point, and maybe you decide when you want to take questions, Cass, but there's lots of questions. So
Cool. Good. Well, yeah,
yeah.
let's do some questions and then we'll talk more about plants.
Okay, so raise your hand high if you have a question, and I'll go through and I'll call on you. Do not unmute yourself until I call your name, because it makes it so hard for us to hear you guys, okay?
And I'll just say, if you have something to share, maybe you have a story about using dandelions or a story about foraging, you can type that into the chat. We'll have time, we might have time for stories at the end, but I don't want to spend so much time sharing stories that you don't get to learn more of the plants.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to start on my screen on the top. Levi, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
We don't have any grass. Well, it's all just sand.
Oh, and so you might have to forage for dandelions somewhere else, not in your yard, right? Yeah, that's true. Okay. I know your name is not Valerie, but Valerie.
We might plant jalapeno poppers, and we might plant different kinds of food that we can plant.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's see. I see Jamie Bowman. Jamie, you have a question?
Can you also make tea out of dandelions?
You can.
Yeah, dandelion tea. Yummy, yummy. Let's see. Going through. Christy. Is that you, Abby? Oh, okay. Yeah, you didn't change.
Sorry,
your
yes.
It's okay.
Some dandelions do have flowers, and also if you have grass in your yard, you do not want dandelions because they can kill.
Because they what?
Because they can kill your grass.
Oh, they can kill your grass. Yeah, I mean,
Again,
I'll let
that's
Cass
another
talk to that.
perception. Some people
Yeah.
might want to have an entire yard full of something they can eat, like dandelions, instead of grass, which they can't. So it's up to you when you have grass to decide whether you want dandelions or grass.
Yep, very good. All right, Cristiano. There we go. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so So months ago, my 6-year-old cousin went to this town, and I started playing with her. So she started eating one of the tree leaves and spat them out. What are the symptoms?
One more time, bud. So you went with your cousin somewhere. She ate some leaves. She spit them out. And then what is your question?
What are the symptoms of eating leaves?
What are the symptoms of eating leaves? Cass, you want to handle that one? You want me to take it real quick?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So most leaves won't hurt you. I can't think of any leaf. I'm sure there is some, but I can't think of any, especially around New Mexico, that are toxic. There's a fun leaf in Texas that's called Tickle Tongue because it makes your tongue tingle. And there's a leaf that looks like it here in New Mexico. And every time I walk by one, I put it in my mouth to see if it's that leaf, but it's not. But you shouldn't do that. I do that because I'm an adult and I have experience with this, but you shouldn't do that. The symptoms of eating leaves are, if it's something like a grass, it could give you an upset stomach. It could give you diarrhea, but that's probably the worst that's going to happen. But that's a good moral that you shouldn't be eating anything that you don't know what it is.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have 2 more and then we're going to move on. Harper, go ahead. Yep, go ahead and unmute yourself, Harper.
Why do people eat dandelions? What do they taste like?
Dead leaves?
No, she said, why do people eat dandelions and what do they taste like?
Why? People eat them because they can, I guess, because they're out in the wild. What do they taste like? It depends on the part that you eat. The leaves kind of taste like a bland piece. Well, it kind of tastes like arugula, if you've ever had that in your salad. Which, going to the last question we had, we do eat leaves. There are leaves that you can eat, like lettuce, arugula. Some of you might be growing some garden salad varieties in your yard. Those are leaves that we eat. And the flowers kind of taste like fuzzy lettuce, but with a little bit of sweet. It's a unique taste. And actually, I'm glad you asked me that because you reminded me of something I wanted to talk about and I couldn't remember earlier. Okay, one more question.
Actually, I was going to ask, let me go back, LeBergen to share, but I think they just put in the group chat that dandelions are very healthy. So unless there's something else that you wanted to share, I'm sharing that because you put that in the group chat. So I'm going to hand it back over to Miss Cass and let her keep going so we can get through her entire presentation.
Cool. There's not a ton more, but I'm going to tell you about some more wild foods. We talked about dandelions, and now we're going to talk a lot about trees, because a lot of cool wild foods come from trees, and trees are not usually something that is growing in your garden. So this might be a little bit different than what you've been learning about. Does anybody recognize this tree? Maybe not this specific tree, but you've probably seen some that look like this. This is a type of juniper. I should have put the name on there. This picture is it's a less common juniper than we have in New Mexico. You've probably seen one that looks like this or like this. We have kind of mostly these two varieties, the Utah and the one seed juniper. Juniper is an awesome wild plant. I did just discover this morning that there are 2 types of juniper that can give you a really bad tummy ache, but they are native to Europe and Asia. So you're probably never going to find them in here in New Mexico unless someone uses those types in their yard. Sometimes people use juniper trees for decoration. So as long as you are following the rule that you're not trespassing and you're not picking berries off out of people's yards, I have eaten lots of juniper berries. These berries are awesome because they are covered in what looks like a little wax, which is actually a wild yeast. And yeast is important for making bread. So people used to use juniper berries to help them make bread, to brew drinks like beer. People used to use a long time ago. I see some questions. Is there a specific question about juniper? For some reason, I can't see. The group of 2 in the blue shirts. I can't see your names. You have a question about juniper? Whoops.
We have like a plant. It looks like juniper, but it's like, I don't know what it is.
Oh,
No,
so
more like a bush.
should you eat
like
it?
A bush.
It's a bush.
I don't know.
It could be a juniper.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write it in case you like to spell. So juniper, oh wow, it was going so well. So sometimes you can eat the berries in the wild. Sometimes when I'm hiking with kids, I will ask each student to pick one berry and to try it. But the ripening season for juniper is usually in the fall. So if you went and found one right now, it might be there from last year and it might be especially bitter. Juniper is already a fairly bitter plant. It's not a berry like a raspberry that you can just go eat and is really sweet. So it's not often thought of as an edible food. I once harvested a ton of juniper and made juniper jam. Here's a pot of, you can see the juniper berries. They're sort of the light grayish purple ones. And then I also added some cranberries, which are also a bitter fruit that I had in my freezer. And I added a ton of sugar and I cooked them down. And you can see this jar is sideways to show you how sticky that jam is. It's not gonna, like my grape jam that I buy from the store, if I turn it upside down, it's gonna fall out. This jam was really sticky. But people have made jam like this for hundreds of years to put on meat, especially game meat like elk and deer. The bitter kind of planty taste of the juniper berries goes really well with meat. And I was going to give you a juniper berry recipe, but I couldn't find one that wasn't very complicated. And since they're not ripe, we are going to move on to the state tree of New Mexico. If you recognize this tree, I want you to nod up and down. If you have no idea, I want you to be like, what? It's just a tree. I don't know. This is, does anybody know what it's called? It's a Pinyon Pine. And these trees are awesome. I love this diagram because it shows the pinyon has 2 needles. The little grouping of needles is called a fascicle, and it has 2 needles in a fascicle. The needles are really short. They're only about probably the size of most of your fingers long. And they grow their cones in 2 years. So what you're seeing in this picture is on the very bottom is the first year of cone. It stays green for that entire year. And the next year the cone gets brown. And in the fall, the cone opens up. And what comes out of it?
Blue pokey things.
Pinyon nuts. Pinyon nuts come out of it. These pinyon nuts were roasted. I have eaten pinyon nuts raw, but it can kind of make your tongue tingle if you eat too many raw, which is why when you buy pinyon nuts, they're always roasted pinyon nuts. Pinyon is commonly used here in New Mexico. It's used in coffee. People sell it. People collect it on the side of the road. They sell it on the side of the road. My favorite thing about pinyon nuts is that they are a super delicious fatty nut. And each nut has about 30 to 35 calories, which is a lot of calories for a really small food that's probably like the size of your thumbnail. But if you think about it, these trees are one of the few decent foods out in the wild for animals like squirrels and bears that are getting ready to hibernate. So when this ripens in the fall, all of those animals have to find all of these seeds that they can to store lots of fat. And they're competing with us humans because pinyon nuts are delicious. You may have harvested these yourself. You may have seen people stopped on the side of the road in October, November, depending on where you live, and collecting these. I have done both. All right, we are going to talk about another tree. This is also a pine tree, but it looks different than our pinyon, doesn't it? It's a big, tall pine tree called a Ponderosa Pine. And it's different in a couple ways. The needles are a lot longer, and they're in groupings of 3. Now, here's a recipe you can try today. If you have a Ponderosa Pine near you, you might be able to go find one. I see a couple questions, but just let me finish this recipe and then we'll take another quick break for questions. Here's the recipe. You take one grouping of needles, the picture, these 3 needles in this picture, which is one fascicle, one grouping. This grouping has 10 times the vitamin C of an orange. So you could follow this recipe and get your vitamin C for the day, which helps you stay strong and builds your immune system, which is great during a pandemic. Or you could eat 10 oranges. And in my opinion, this is a lot easier than eating 10 oranges. So all you do is you take a fascicle, you fold it up, you can break it into pieces, but I usually just fold mine like an accordion back and forth to try to get as many bends in it as possible, which is going to release the delicious vitamin C goodness. And then I drop it in my water bottle. And that's it. You can put it in warm water. You don't want it to put it in boiling water, or that eradicates the vitamin C, but you can put it in warm water, or I just put it in my water bottle when I'm hiking. And the next time I take a sip, about 10 minutes later, there's this delicious fresh pine taste, and I'm getting vitamin C. All right, Levi and Selah, you have a question?
I don't know if any of you guys knew this, but you can actually get green pine cones, and you can open them up, and there's tiny little seeds inside of them.
Oh, yeah, but if you do with the green pine cones, then they're never going to ripen because you've opened them up and you've ruined the seed to becoming a pinyon. But you're right. What you've found is the future pinyon seeds. Harper, you have a question?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I've never had one of those in my water bottle before.
Most people haven't, unless you've hiked with me or someone else who really enjoys this. I've made probably hundreds of students try this, and only one didn't like it. So maybe you're another one of the weird kids who doesn't like it. But again, it's delicious. It's a good way to get vitamin C. It is sort of hard if you live like right in Albuquerque. It's sort of hard to find a Ponderosa pine. You might, if you go on a hike with Miss Sarah tomorrow, you'll probably find some in the Sandias, and you can try this. Some people do have them growing in their yards in the neighborhood. All right, I'm gonna move on because we're sort of running out of time, and I want time for more questions and jokes and stuff at the end. Here is another plant that is like dandelion, only it's a little pricklier. This is a plant often called prickly pear cactus, and you can probably see those delicious, juicy, red fruits on top. Prickly pear is sort of like dandelion because you can eat almost all of it. You can eat the pads, you can eat the fruit, and my favorite is you can eat the flowers. And for some reason forgot a picture of the flowers, but the flowers are usually yellow or white. And you don't want to pick all the flowers because they need to be pollinated to make these fruits. But if you were hiking with me, or if you see them on your hike tomorrow, or you're with an adult, you can try. Usually I'll just take one leaf of the flower petal, one petal of the flower, and I'll eat it. And it kind of tastes like a slimy potato chip, but it's fun because you can eat a slimy potato chip in the wild.
We've made lemonade out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we have a whole bush of it on our side of the house.
nice. So up here in Taos, we don't have really the ideal, we're up at a higher elevation, so they grow really small. But when I lived in Albuquerque, I lived at an open space called the Bakeki Open Space in the North Valley. And there are, if you go there in the fall, you can harvest hundreds of these. There's so many. I don't know if you're allowed to do that actually, but you can tell them the cast sent you. I'm sure it's fine.
What's its name? What's
Hold
its
on
name?
the questions. I might answer your question. So this is the fruit. This is the fruit cut open. Here's someone eating it. There are these big chunky seeds in them that you would want to spit out. But you can see it's a really juicy, fleshy fruit. I've used it. I put it in lemonade. I've made sorbet, like ice cream out of it. My brother put it in, I guess that was a type of sorbet. So it's really good in juices because it's got this refreshing flavor. When I've eaten it in the wild, when it's warm, it sort of tastes like a mix between a kiwi and a pomegranate, sort of, because it has the big seeds. But it's a unique flavor that tastes almost like the color that it looks. Here's a picture of a student that I was with. We were eating some and the juice got everywhere, and the juice turns this vibrant fuchsia color. So that's the fruit. But like I said, you can also eat the pads and you can eat the flowers. Here's the thing about eating
Dragon fruit does that.
prickly pear. You may notice that it's called prickly pear because it's covered in all these pricklers. It's covered in spines. So obviously you can't just go out and pick one up and eat it. You'll get spines all over your hand. And not only the big spines, there are these little tiny hairs called glockids. Those are the ones that really get in your hand. And they're on the fruit and they're on the pad. So here's how you harvest them. Well, there's a specific way to harvest them. That's all I'm going to say. And if you're with an adult, you can look up more, but you shouldn't eat them without taking the spines off. And that's how people do. Another edible food that you've probably passed by all the time. In fact, this is our state flower. We've now seen our state tree and now our state flower. This is does anybody know? A yucca plant. And this is a flowering yucca. And the yucca plant makes these delicious fruits. This is from a banana yucca plant, which is so named. I don't think all yuccas have edible foods. So again, you should have an adult with you if you're gonna try one, and you should for sure know that it's a banana yucca because those are the ones that are edible. And they're not edible when they're raw. You actually have to roast them. In fact, I think I have a picture of that. Yeah. So here's a little diagram about the banana yucca. The raw fruit you can't eat, but when you roast it, it's a really sweet treat. And like many of the things I've been showing you so far, other than the Ponderosa Pine, which is something you can try today, these won't be ripe until the fall because it takes time for the flowers are just growing. The flower has to get pollinated, and then the tree or plant can spend its energy growing the fruit, which sometimes takes all summer or fall. Another favorite, I don't know why I did all of these based out of Taos, but this is actually a black raspberry. There's wild raspberries. There's another very similar plant called the Thimbleberry. Often you'll find these when you're hiking up a little bit higher. And then, like I said before, you want to make sure that you don't take them all. I think we're going to wrap up there. We're going to do a quick quiz and then I'll take some questions or stories or jokes, maybe kind of in sequence. So this is a true or false. I want everyone to get the chat ready. Instead of unmuting, we can type in the chat. And as soon as you know the answer,
Or thumbs up, true, thumbs down, false. That's
Perfect.
the easiest. There we go. Thumbs up if it's true, thumbs down if it's false. Okay, guys?
Y'all ready? Got your thumbs? Whenever you find a red berry, you can eat it, true or false? I better see a bunch of thumbs down. Many red berries are toxic. So the red berries I just showed you, which are raspberries, are edible, but there are so many berries. We looked at those random yellow berries earlier. There's so many berries that I don't know that can just grow randomly that could hurt you. So you shouldn't, that's a good example of why you shouldn't just go around eating unless you're really sure this red berry, I'm sure is raspberry. I know from the leaves, I know from the berry. And even if you're not sure you have a raspberry, you can take one little bite and be like, oh yeah, that tastes like what I know a raspberry tastes like. But you shouldn't do that with just random red berries that you find. All right, next, true or false? Oops. We should leave most foods behind for wild animals. True or false? Nice. Yes, thumbs up. Wild animals know what foods to eat. They might be able to eat things that we can't eat. They might be able to eat things that we can eat, like plums. When I collected buckets and buckets of plums, I still left lots of plums for the local bear who came and ate all the ones that had fallen on the ground. True or false, always have a responsible adult with you when foraging. Don't just bring your cousin, Vinny, who just turned 18 and technically he's an adult, but he's going to be staring at his phone the whole time. And you're like, hey, Vinny, can I eat this? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, kid. That is not a responsible adult. So true, you should always have a responsible adult with you when you're foraging. True or false, foraged food is bigger, juiciest, and more delicious. Juicier and more delicious. True or false? Nice. It can be true or false, but usually foraged food, food that grows in the wild, doesn't have people watering it every day, people giving it fertilizer. So usually it's a little bit more random. It's not always more delicious than garden food.
So it's false.
All right. I am going to stop sharing so that I can see all of you. And we are about wrapped up, but I bet some of you still have questions. Again, if it's a story or a statement, I would love to read that in the chat, but I want to spend my last few minutes. Levi and Stella have another question. Go ahead.
Some plants you must watch out because some can be poison ivy.
That's true. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of poison ivy here in New Mexico, but that is definitely something to look for. I probably should have had a slide about what poison ivy looks like. I'm going to see if Sarah can field questions for a second. I just remember there's one more thing I want to show you that you can and should eat because it's a wild invasive. And I remembered it while I was in the bathroom and then I forgot.
Hey, Cass, I'm just popping in to tell you that I'm turning my video off because my Wi-Fi is going in and out.
Okay.
So I'm here, but it tends to be when I have my video on, for some reason, it's malfunctioning currently.
Totally.
Mine too.
Well, I might not have time to share this with you, which is unfortunate. But I will actually, maybe I'll carry it over till tomorrow, till next week. Let's see, I might have time for one more question. Valerie?
What?
Valerie, did you have a question? Or Daiquiri while Valerie's waiting? You're muted.
We're growing potato plants, radishes, and lettuce.
Oh, you know what? Potato plant is a great example of a leaf that is poisonous. So potato plants, we can eat the root and they're well, the root is delicious when you cook it, but the leaf, we shouldn't go munching on potato leaves. Harper has a question.
We're gonna plant tomatoes, strawberries.
Cool. Hold it there. I'm really excited to hear about your gardens, and maybe we can talk more about what you all are planning to plant next week. I want to see if anyone has any questions specifically about foraged food. I see Christy is looking really excited with a question. There's a whole family there.
My sister, for some reason, can't.
Okay, hold on. We're going to Christy right now. Yeah, in the red shirt.
How do we know if we can forage plants?
How do you know if you can eat the plant? Like if you're hiking and you just find a random plant? You sort of put out.
Abby, you guys are really choppy, love. So we can't really hear what you're saying.
If you're looking for a plant, or if you're going on a hike and you see something and you don't know if you can eat it, I recommend not eating it. But if you're interested in more, there's some really cool books. This one, Wild Plants of the Pueblo province, is made by a local guy. I have a signed copy. And he talks about plants that you not only can eat, but you can use to make medicines or to make other things about. I also have an edible food guide. If you're interested in foraged foods, I recommend picking up a book about it. And then there's a whole system, if you're not sure if something's edible, of trying just a little bit and then spitting it out and then holding it in your mouth. And maybe I'll cover that a little bit more next week. Yeah, because I don't have time to go into it right now. There's so many more questions, but I'm running out of time. But I see a question in the chat. Oh, good question. How can you tell? I'm going to end with this. And if you have more questions, maybe we can.
Yeah, so if you have more, don't feel stressed, Cass. We do this every week. This
I'm
is how
sure.
it always ends. They know if their question didn't get asked, you guys can email it to me and I'll get it over to Miss Cass and she can answer all of your questions, okay? So if your hand is still raised, it's not because we don't love you and we don't want to hear from you. We totally want to, but you know, we would be here all day long. We know how that goes, right? Everybody has lots of questions. So email me the questions after Miss Cass answers this last question, okay? And we'll make sure we get you your answers. Got it? Thumbs up, everybody understands? Okay, go ahead, Miss Cass.
Awesome. Because I have to go teach in like 1 minute after this. So how can you tell if the pine needle tree is really the pine needle tree? The Ponderosa pine, well, 2 answers. The only pine that we really have around Albuquerque with long needles is the Ponderosa pine. So if you find a plant that has needles that are about this long, longer than your hand, and there's groupings of 3, I 100%, I'm almost positive, we'll say 95%, it's the Ponderosa pine. The other answer is that all pine needles have vitamin C in them. Those are just the ones that I found to be the tastiest. So if you walk by a pinyon pine and you pick those 2 little tiny needles and you chew on them, you'll also get vitamin C out of those that way. I've never heard of a pine needle being toxic, especially here in New Mexico. I'll say that here in New Mexico, I've tried all the pine needles and it's fine. Yeah, cool. Thank you all so much.
All right, guys, what do we tell Miss Cass? Everybody unmute real quick. What do we tell her?
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, we'll see her next week. Miss Cass, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, she's off.
Bye.
Everybody mute. Everybody mute. Everybody mute. Everybody mute. You guys were so amazing. I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for being so awesome for her. She shared some really cool information, right? Like thumbs up if you thought it was really awesome. Thumbs down if you thought it was horrible. 1 up, 1 down if it was like, nah. Oh yeah, everybody's thumbs totally up because it was way, way cool. All of her information was so neat. So she's coming back next week to share a little bit more information with us too. Some about foraging and some about some other stuff because she's got all kinds of cool smarts inside her brain. But I thought she said something that was really cool today. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it before we left. She said, without even thinking, her and I didn't even talk about this. Remember last week I was telling you when you're a gardener, you have to wonder a lot of things and you have to try a lot of things and you have to try it and you make a mistake and you try something new, right? And she kind of mentioned about that too and how you'll never do anything perfect, but you can just keep trying with your gardens and just keep trying with your new projects. So I just want to encourage you guys to keep working on your compost piles. I want you to keep working on your gardens. I want you to think about companion planting. And now I want you to try to see if you can find any of the forageable plants that Miss Cass talked about. The easiest one might be dandelions or maybe some of our pine trees to stick in your water bottle and get some vitamin C. Okay, guys? So that's what we're going to do for this week. We'll be back next week. Have a good rest of your day. Okay?
You too. Bye.
And I'm going to send everybody information about our hike for tomorrow if you want to join us. I know that Ethan and Rowan are going to join us, and I know that Genesis is probably going to be there. So I hope some of you all can be there too. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys. See you later. Have a good rest of your days.
Bye.